Hello, good evening. This is the Monday Agenda. The Monday Agenda today is looking onto how Tanzania is about to grasp the opportunity through the blue economy. And there couldn't be a better person to talk about blue economy in Tanzania than the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Fisheries and none other but Dr. Rashid Tamatama. Doctor, very welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Before we dwell into the blue economy, Doctor, let's first understand the mandate of your docket, the mandate of the ministry.
Okay. As the name indicates, our ministry is made up of two sectors. We have a livestock sector, which have a separate permanent secretary, Professor Elisante Ol Gabriel, and I'm a permanent secretary responsible for fisheries sector. And the fisheries sector, when we talk about fisheries sector, is made up of two subsectors. We have capture fisheries and aquaculture. So we have two directorates as well. We have a director of fisheries and director of aquaculture. Aquaculture is related to fish farming.
Okay.
Yes. And this sector is mandated to ensure that fisheries sector is developed in a manner that it contributes to significant economic contribution to the nation, but also the well-being of the fishery stakeholders. But as we tap resources from fishery sector, we have to make sure that we reduce environmental degradation. Yeah. So this is the mandate of the fishery sector.
Just to understand, when we speak about fisheries, the ministry is mandated specifically to ensure that we have enough supply of fish, or looking onto the biodiversity of fish, or looking onto the consumption of fish. What exactly does, you've mentioned of the two directorates. So what exactly roles do these directorates play?
Yeah, these two directorates, one of the issues you have mentioned clearly, that we are supposed to ensure that there is a sustainable production of fish in the country,
okay,
for the many benefits we derive from the fishery sector. That is food security, but also there is employment, which all of them can contribute to the economic well-being of people of Tanzania. Right. So when we talk about capture fisheries, is that type of fisheries where you harvest from the existing natural water bodies. So if you go fishing into the lake, in the ocean, that is capture fisheries. Okay. And there is a separate directorate dealing with that. But if you are harvesting fish through aquaculture, or many people fight as fish farming, that is another directorate. Okay. So we can produce fish through those two avenues, either fishing, capture fisheries, or raising your own fish and then harvest them when they grow to a table size.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've had a number of challenges in the past as far as capture fisheries is concerned. We've seen the minister or the deputy minister burning the nets. Yes. There have been a number of illegal fishing left, right, and center here in Tanzania. And I understand this is also under the mandate of your ministry, making sure that all these are taken into consideration. How far are we doing right now in terms of people not practicing illegal fishing? Do we still have illegal fishing in Tanzania? Okay.
Oh, let me start by answering your question by stipulating that actually the fisheries sector is guided by the fisheries policy, National Fisheries Policy of 2015. And this implementation of this policy is also guided by several legal and legal frameworks and legal instruments. And one of them is Fisheries Act number 22 of year 2003, which has got its principal regulations of 2009, and also there are some amendments related to that act which were made recently in 2020. Now, you have mentioned the issue of illegal fishing. So one of the mandate of this fisheries policy, our Fisheries Act, actually it regulates the way fishing will be conducted in our water bodies. Yeah. It looks at sustainable harvesting of the. Now, illegal fishing is one of those activities which will make fisheries unsustainable. So the Act provides some of the enforcement, but it has got some of the penalties which are given and it stipulates the type of nets which are legal and those which are illegal. And you mentioned, or you asked the question whether illegal fishing is still rampant or not.
Yes.
Actually, over the last 5 years, we've done very well in trying to reduce, I can't say eliminating completely, but we've reduced illegal fishing by probably 80% along the inland water bodies, lakes, and but almost 100% along the marine environment, where blast fishing used to be a very rampant.
I'm trying to understand, Dr. Permanent Secretary, that we have, as you rightly said, we have the acts, we have the policy, we have all these, but a lay person, a man coming from a village, let's say somewhere in Mwanza, pulling his net and his small canoe going to the lake Victoria to fish. How do you make sure that they are aware of these laws and policies and procedures, etc.?
You know, even a person operating a canoe, because before he goes out into the lake for fishing, he has to have a license.
Is that so?
Yes.
Here in Tanzania?
In Tanzania, yes.
All right.
You have to have a fishing license.
Okay.
Now, before you are offered that fishing license, you are taken through all the do's and don'ts of the fishing industry in that area. So majority of them, they understand that if I'm doing this, this is a legal net, and if I'm doing this, actually this is illegal. So if they're doing illegal fishing, they do that intentionally, not because of ignorance of what constitutes illegal or legal net.
Even the small scale
Even the
fishermen.
small scale, you can take your boat into the lake. You have to have a license.
Excellent. Doctor, let's delve into the blue economy now. Yes, I've heard blue economy now consistently. I'm happy to say that probably the first time it came so out loud is when the president of Zanzibar, just said Zanzibar is into blue economy. And now our president, Honorable Samia Suluhu, last week, she also insisted, I think, during the appointment, during the restructuring of the government, on blue economy. My viewers would really be interested to understand what it is meant when we say blue economy.
Okay, I would say blue economy is quite new, as you said, new and emerging development paradigm, which focuses on how coastal resources, or ocean resources, or inland water-based resources, those resources which are found in aquatic environment, can be used to stimulate economic growth and sustainably or significantly contribute to the sustainable development. And it advocates things like economic well-being of the people, but also social equity. But while you are doing that, it takes cognizance of the importance of making sure that we reduce environmental and ecological degradation. Because if you harm the environment, then whatever you are getting from the blue economy or from those water resources is not going to be sustainable over a long term.
Of course.
Yes.
So how broad is blue economy? When you look onto the blue economy, do we look onto only the fish or the fishing activities? Countries like China have gone far advanced in terms of, the carbs, the snails, whatnot, what forth. Is it the same, or do we have our own sort of like guideline to what we mean by, investing or going big into blue economy in Tanzania?
Okay. That's a good question, because many people, when you talk about blue economy, they only think of fisheries.
Yes.
Fisheries is just one subcomponent of the blue economy in totality. So in addition, it has got so many benefits we can get from blue economy. So in addition to getting fish, getting fishery resources from the water, as you mentioned, but there are many sectors of economy from which you can derive the benefits of blue economy. And this including coastal and marine tourism. So if you're doing tourism in aquatic environment or in waterways, that also is part of the blue economy. But it includes things like shipping, that is ocean transportation, ports, issues like oil and gas. If you're doing mining of gas or oil in the aquatic environment, that contributes to blue economy.
Is that so?
Yeah,
okay.
And also renewable energies. You can get them from the ocean, and all of those contribute. And when I'm talking about renewable energies, it includes things like you can generate electricity from the ocean waves, or you can generate electricity from wind in the ocean. So all these in totality, they contribute to the blue economy.
Okay.
But from the angle of in terms of ecosystem services, some services which we get from, which are included in the blue economy. For instance, blue economy also helps to regulate atmospheric and temperature regulation. So that role is also part of the blue economy, but also it helps in water purification, water filtration. All these issues are included in the blue economy. So it is so broad.
Yes,
not only fisheries.
I'm grasping that broadness of the concept, but I wish to understand, maybe looking onto the budget 2019-2020.
Yes.
What was the contribution of the ministry, or subsector, specifically fisheries, to the GDP?
Okay, GDP, our contribution is
in terms of percentage.
Yeah, it's not that significant as we would hope to think about having that vast area of water resources. We only contribute like 1.71% to the GDP, but the sector is very important in terms of food security, ensuring food and nutritional security. About 30% of the animal protein consumed in this country, protein of 30%. Animal source, 30% comes from fisheries. Of course, the other is coming from livestock and other sources. So that is a contribution to the food and nutrition security. But as I would say that we ought to do more to make our contribution felt. In terms of annual fish consumption, in the 90s, where every Tanzanian was eating like 14 kilograms of fish per year in the 80s. But now it has declined because the population has increased. At the same time, our production has not matched that population increase. So at the moment, we are eating only 8.5 kilograms of fish per person per year. And that's very low compared to the global average, which is given by FAO, which is 20 kilograms per person per year. But at least we should do something to get to the at least 10%, which is 10 kilograms, which is the sub-Saharan average, sub-Saharan Africa average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doctor, I asked specifically the contribution to the GDP because, you know, when you get the broad definition or broad understanding of blue economy, you spoke about exploration activities, you spoke about tourism, you spoke about, you know, fishing itself, etc. And if these are all part of the blue economy and still you do not take credit for them, then probably the contribution could have been more if, for instance, the exploration, the gas, the oil and gas, you know, gave some contribution to the sector. I stand to be corrected.
I restricted myself to talk about blue economy from the fisheries perspective.
Okay.
Because these other sectors are being regulated by other ministries, and they've got their own policies, their own law. So my talk will mainly focus on the blue economy as per fisheries sectors concerned. So I know when you put together all these other economic sectors, the contribution of blue economy to the GDP should be significantly high.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So where do you all meet? You know, Ministry of Fisheries, Livestock and Fisheries, Ministry, for instance, of Minerals, Ministry of Energy, etc. Where do you all meet when it comes to, for instance, if there's a discovery of oil and gas in the Indian Ocean, for instance? So will that be, it won't be under the Ministry of Fisheries, of course, Livestock and Fisheries. It will be under the Ministry of Minerals. So where do you meet and discuss terms?
I would say that our basic meeting point would be the Environment and Management Act, which is a law, because we operate on the same environment. But as I do fishing, as a person from mining oil or gas, they must make sure that they do not affect the activities of another ministry, of another stakeholder. For instance, if by mining you pollute the water, my fish are going to get affected, and they will not be able to harvest the fish resources sustainably. So that's why if I'm doing fishing, if they are doing mining, before you start mining or before you start fisheries project, you have to carry out what is called environmental impact assessment.
Correct.
Which stipulates the way you are going to make sure that your activities are not going to harm the activities of another person using the same resource or operating in the same environment. So I would say that's where we meet mostly.
All right.
Yeah.
Doctor, you're talking to more than 55 million Tanzanians who are either watching or they'll get content of this program. We've had for a long time, until recently, probably, God bless the soul of the late Magufuli, but we've had for the longest time instances whereby people, investors, in the name of investors, you name this, you name that, have been reaping the resources of Tanzania. And I remember once when the late Magufuli was a minister, you know, the fish case. You remember very well as well when he said, no, you know, you can't do this. Let this be consumed. I kind of remember a lot of people came out, they got a share of that, the fish that were illegally invested in the water and in the zone, in the Tanzanian zone. But I'm trying to think, how can Tanzanians make the most of the blue economy? Because Our Excellency Samia Suluhu has broadly said, let's go on to the blue economy. And you've also mentioned right now that you want to have that increment, you know, as a subsector. So how can, you know, the Tanzanians make the most of the blue economy?
Okay. First, I would like to you mentioned in your question that people are coming, foreign vessels, and reaping resources from Tanzania and go away. That is the thing of the past.
Yes.
It is thing of because now we have our union institution called Deep Sea Fishing Authority, which is based in Fumba, Zanzibar.
Okay.
They are very well equipped in terms of protecting the entire area of EEZ in Tanzania. So they've got some plans or some equipments which can monitor the entire EEZ of Tanzania, so they can know the type of vessel. So since we you know, a few years back, one of the ship was apprehended doing illegal fishing in Tanzania. It's called Buhanaga, and actually docked in Twara. And there was a court case which went on for about a year.
Yes.
And those guys were actually given a penalty of paying like 1 billion shillings. They never paid, and they're now serving a jail sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, so from that moment on, many people who used to come to Tanzanian waters and fish illegally are no longer coming. And so we monitor our waters very, very diligently. Now coming to the avenues in which we think a ministry can play part in diversifying the blue economy. Blue economy in Tanzania has already been included in the 5-year development plans.
Okay.
And for fisheries sector, it intends to diversify the sector. And there's a number of activities which will be carried out under the plan. As we implement the 5-year development plan in fisheries sector, there are a number of activities which we will carry out to modernize the sector. And some of this includes, as you mentioned earlier, we're going to invest heavily in the deep sea fishing. That is an area where we have not ventured into. We have gone through territorial waters and invested in most of the inland water resources, but for deep sea fishing, we have not invested. So in the next 5 years, we are going to see massive investment by the government and private sector in deep sea fishing.
Is this starting 2021 or
Actually,
2020?
Actually, it makes our activities, implementation of fisheries activities to implement the National Development Plan starts next financial year, which begins in July,
okay.
1st of this
year, 2021.
Yes. So one of them is, one of the investment on that area is the procurement of 8 fishing vessels by the government, which are going to engage in fishing deep sea. 4 of those fishing vessels will be based in Zanzibar, and they will be operated by Zafico, and 4 of the fishing vessels will be operated by Tafico, which is in the process of being revived soon. And even before the procurement of those 4 ships, fishing vessels for mainland part of the question, Tafico is going to acquire its first fishing vessel from a grant which we received from the government of Japan. And that vessel is already under the process of being procured. Actually, it is being constructed in Sri Lanka, and we expect it to get into Tanzania. That is in December or January of next year.
Wow.
So that will be first. So that is one area. But another area of investment is construction of fishing harbour. And you heard Honorable Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, the other day, talking about that a port is going to be constructed, but he should not mention where it's going to be constructed. But this port will be constructed in Makani, Bagamoyo.
Okay.
Yeah, the feasibility study was conducted.
Fishing port.
Fishing port, not a cargo port. The one we have in Dar es Salaam is a cargo port. Fishing, actually, to keep the quality of the fish and the food, we're not supposed to land fish in a port like that, because they can be liable to a lot of contaminations.
Correct.
So you have to have a separate harbour, which is probably designated for fishing. So the first fishing harbour is going to be constructed in Bagamoyo, that is in Pegani area, and the construction will begin. Funds have already been set aside in the ministry for construction of that, and construction will begin the next financial year.
Okay.
So fishing harbour alone is expected to generate about 30,000 jobs, new jobs. And when we talk about fishing harbour, people think about putting up a deep water berth where a fishing vessel can dock, but it involves fisheries infrastructure. You have to construct like a fish factory, fish processing factory along that area, cold chain operation, and a facility where a fishing vessel can dock and get some services and all this kind of thing. Okay. That's why we say once operational, it can contribute up to 30,000 jobs. And so that is another area of investment in blue economy. But we are also reviewing some of the legal framework, legal instruments that we have right now to make sure that, like fisheries policy and other policies, which regulates the way fishing and fisheries activities and production are conducted, to make sure that they are friendlier to the investment drive which is currently getting into the country.
Yeah, talking about the policies that are friendlier to boost more investment in the country. I beg to understand. You mentioned Tafico. You're working towards reviving Tafico. That was a government body, and I again stand to be corrected, Doctor, that the government is to ensure the enabling environment for investment in the country, whilst allowing private sector to thrive, because the investment, the technical, all this, the private sector is investing on that, the research, etc. I do not know what factors led to the collapse of Tafico. couple of years back. But how is Tafiko now, as a permanent secretary? Probably you would have a very good response to that. But how is Tafiko now positioned to address the challenges that made it collapse then, so that, you know, it has sort of sustainability for Tanzania? Not investing onto a dead cow or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I know, Tafiko was not, did not collapse because of making losses.
Okay.
But way back in 1996, therearound, there was this policy of the government of privatization.
Correct.
So when it was privatized, Tafiko, I think in 1998, that's when it completely ended. Tafiko was a profit-making corporation. But simply because of the government policy that all public entities, government do not want to do business. All government entities have to be privatized. Absolutely. So Tafiko was privatized on that ground. And it was offered for sale. But fortunately, or unfortunately, it did not get somebody to buy it until when 2015, the government decided that it should be returned because it was sent to PSRIF for privatization.
Yes.
But later in mid-2000, I think it is 2005, it was returned to the ministry, the then Ministry of Livestock and then Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism by then, because fisheries belonged to that ministry. It was returned to the ministry for ultimate sale to the, but it never got somebody to buy it. And way back in 2015, the government decided that the ministry, now the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries, should revive Tafiko through private sector. So now you ask the question, how are we going to ensure? But I said it was still a profit-making corporation, but nowadays we are going to work hand in hand with the private sector because it is very important. We know that running a big corporation like Tafiko, you need a lot of technical expertise, which we might not be having. So Tafiko will operate deep sea fishing and all this project involving stakeholders. For instance, in deep sea fishing, you have to identify a company internationally which has a reputation of doing well in the fishing sector, deep sea fishing. So the government will own ships, will own all this other infrastructure, probably get a company to provide expertise on running that and put into a joint venture and run that company.
Dr. Rashid Tamatama is the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries, but his docket is specifically on fisheries. And we're looking on to the recent developments in Tanzania under the leadership of Her Excellency Samia Suluhu, where she boldly said that, you know, we should really invest, we should really look onto the blue economy because the opportunities are vast in that sector. And the Monday agenda is highly privileged today to look and discuss with Dr. Tamatama on the blue economy in Tanzania. Tanzania, Doctor, has very many young people, very many women who could really, you know, benefit. Again, I'm looking on to, you know, the blue economy in terms of generating the employment. You've spoken about the 30,000 jobs that are going to be created after reviving the
construction of the fishing harbor.
The construction of the fishing harbor. You've also mentioned the deep sea fishing, which will come hand in hand with that. You've also spoken about, you know, the harbor. I'm trying to look onto what are other opportunities for young people. I mean, we look with hope. We look at the future with hope as Tanzania's young people. But what are other opportunities that you envisage to emanate from, you know, boosting resources into the fishery subsector?
Yeah, I should probably start by telling your viewers that currently the fishery sector and the aquaculture subsector, capture fisheries and the aquaculture subsector, is employing about 200, directly employing about 230,000 people that who are directly employed in the sector, but indirectly it offers employment to more than 4.5 million people who are engaged along the fisheries and aquaculture value chain. Okay. When I'm talking about the value chain, it means from production, fish processing, value addition, issues, marketing, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, so that is, I said earlier that our contribution to the economy, to the GDP, is only 1.71%. So, as we implement the 5-year development plan, there is a number of areas where we think we can do well in attracting employment to that sector. Mm-hmm. And one of them is that we need to increase the investment in all along the value chain of fisheries and aquaculture. That is from production. We have to make sure that we increase the production. Currently, last year, as of last year, or 2019-2020, fish production in Tanzania was about, it has increased actually from 362,000 metric tons in year 2015-2016 to 497,000 tons in year 1920. So there is a substantial increase on that area, but in terms of aquaculture, we have increased from 3,500 tons in 2015, and last year we had about 18,000 metric tons. And in the 5-year development plan target, we wish to increase the production up to 50,000 tons by year 2025 and 100,000 tons by the year 2030. So by increasing production, then we are going to add value along the value chain, because there will be fish factories which are going to offer employment. We can construct more fish processing factories which are going to offer employment and all this kind of. But also in terms of aquaculture, you have people who are working on producing fish feed. They're going to get a market, because as aquaculture increases, you need more food for feeding your fish. You need more. So that is one area of investment which we think we can be able to create more jobs in the area. But also those strategic projects like fishing harbors, as talked about before, Tafiko, all of those are going to increase the avenue of offering employment to the young people and the women.
Doctor, looking on to simply the map of Africa, Tanzania is largely endowed with water bodies, by far and by large, probably the leading in Africa. Borrowing from, for instance, the Ministry of Agriculture, you know, they have the research centers, they have the training institutions. Do we have such under the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries that specifically look onto training, research, capacity building in the fishery sector?
Correctly, you said it correctly. Actually, Tanzania is, we are fortunate to have all 3 Great Lakes of Africa. That is Lake Victoria, we have a share of 51%. We have Lake Tanganyika, where we have a share of 41%. And we have Lake Nyasa, which we have a share of about 18.5%. But along the Indian Ocean, we have a coastline of 1,424 kilometers, extending from Moa up north to Msimbati in Mtwara. And on the sea space, we have vast area of water, which is divided into 2 areas. We have what we call territorial seas, maji ya ndani, which comprise about 64,000 metric tons, square kilometers, sorry. That is the area of that territorial sea, square kilometer. But we have another huge area of exclusive economic zone, which comprise of 223,000 square kilometers. So in terms of water resources, we have plenty. And all these water resources are associated with vast fisheries sources which can be harvested by our people. But going back to your question, that we have institutions in Tanzania. We have Tanzania Fisheries Research Institute, which is mandated to promote, conduct, and coordinate fisheries research in this country.
Okay.
Yeah, and all fisheries management decisions that we make at the ministry are based on best available scientific findings, which is generated by TAFIRI. It was established by the current act is Tanzania Fisheries Research Institute Act number 11 of 2016. 2016. And it's an institution which is based in Dar es Salaam, headquarters in Dar es Salaam, but it has got centers in Kigoma, Mwanza, and Kyela. So in all Great Lakes, we are represented, and they're doing a very good job. So when you find that we ban a certain fishing gear and consider it illegal, it is TAFIRI who does all this kind. I've given here statistics of fish catch, or sometimes the number of resources, or the volume of fish that we have in our water bodies. Counting, if you like, is TAFIRI who counts those fish and gives us the figures.
Wow.
Yeah, so before we decide on how many vessels, for instance, we should register, we have to base on the resources which is available in that area, and it's TAFIRI which is giving us. But in terms of training young people and women, but also in extension, we have an agency which is called Fisheries Education and Training Agency, FETA. Yeah, which runs a number of fisheries training institutions. It is headquarters based in Makani, where Fisheries Institute, which used to be Makani Fisheries Institute. So it is based, but it is branch in Mwanza, Nyegezi, and also Kigoma, and more recently in Mikindani, Mtwara, and Gabimori in Sota. So they train people at different levels of training. They offer certificates, but also nowadays they got a mandate of offering a degree.
When we look at Tanzania, say coming 5 years, probably should go beyond the strategic plan, let's say 10 years, in as far as the blue economy is concerned. How do you see it? How do you describe Tanzania?
Well, I'm optimistic that we are going with the implementation of the current plan and the plans which are coming in the future. We are going to make significant contribution to the economy, targeting increasing investment in the sector. I'll just give you an example of how investment can do in boosting the production in the sector. 5 years ago, in aquaculture, we were only producing like 3,500 metric tons. That is aquaculture, all fish farming activities included. That's
3,500 metric tons. Okay.
But from 2016 onwards, people starting investing in cage aquaculture.
Correct.
Or in Swahili, they call it vizimba. And 90% of the vizimbas are in Lake Victoria.
Yes.
Now the production has increased. Of course, there has been an increase in pond fish farming, but a large increase is coming from investment in cage fish farming in Lake Victoria. So with the kind of investment we envisage to have in the deep sea fishing in the next 5 or 10 years, I'm very optimistic that the contribution of the sector to the economy, but also to food security, creation of jobs, but also economic well-being of Tanzanians is going to be huge. Yes.
Before we go to the end, Doctor, and ask you to talk to Tanzanians, we have a share of 41% in the Lake Victoria.
No, Victoria is 51%.
51%.
Yes.
Specifically, I'm targeting Lake Victoria, 51%.
Yes.
Our neighboring Uganda, he's tapping that water and producing hydroelectric power, which, one, we do not have such along Lake Victoria, but two, looking onto the neighboring regions, I remember there was a plan of tapping the water, bringing to the regions which are dry, the likes of Shinyanga, where I originally come from, Tabora, all the way to Dodoma. How much are we doing instead of just saying that we have so much endowments of natural resources, but how much are we tapping in terms of, getting the benefits of actually having these water bodies, but specifically looking onto Lake Victoria in terms of, making sure that the regions, the Doma has water, Shinyanga, the neighboring regions, Tabora, but also issues, aspects of hydroelectric power to, run the milling industries, for instance, in Mwanza and Shinyanga, etc.
Okay. In terms of fisheries, you're right. Actually, I should say that more than 85% of fish which are landed in this country or which are produced in this country are from fresh water.
Okay.
The marine environment contributes less than 15% of the fish.
And I believe that's because of technology.
Yes,
okay,
because of technology.
Right.
But as we go into investment in deep sea, probably that environment will change.
Okay.
Now, out of that, many fish which are produced in inland water, I would say 90% of that, more than 90% is coming from Lake Victoria.
Okay.
So Lake Victoria is when you talk about fisheries sector in this country, actually you are talking about Lake Victoria.
Okay.
So a lot of management issues on this revolves around managing fisheries of Lake Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of fisheries, earlier I told you that we produced last year 497,000 metric tons. Now a large chunk of that actually is coming from Lake Victoria. And when you talk about the export market, a lot of export of fisheries product revolves around those fish factories which are they target Nile perch, and they sell that the product, which are fish fillets, but sometimes other products from Nile perch like fish moles, the so-called mabondo, and
yes.
This is for export. Yeah, so the majority of that export market actually is controlled by those fish factories in Lake Victoria.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is in terms of fisheries, there's a huge
in terms of
benefit.
other potentials.
But the other
water,
potentials, I just want to alert you that people think that if you tap water from Lake Victoria to Nzega or Shinyanga,
yes.
probably you're going to reduce that lake to an extent that it's not going to be sustainable for fisheries. No, that lake is a huge volume of water, and that which is being removed for potable water to the people, and that which is being removed through hydroelectric power in Jinja, it does not affect actually the fisheries.
Can we go to the extent, your ministry, of producing hydroelectric power from Lake Victoria on Tanzania's side?
Yeah, that one, it will better be dealt with by people from the energy sector.
All right.
Yeah, energy
Excellent.
sector, they can tell me, because
All
I'm
right.
not expert on that area. Probably because, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doctor, now you have the Tanzanians watching that would probably have a word or two to tell them. Karibu.
Okay, what I want to tell the Tanzanians is that we have a vast water resources in the water bodies in these countries, the lakes, the oceans, and all of this can be used to invest or carry out vast economic activities which will in one way or another help to revamp our economy, but also offer employment and so many other benefits that we can tap from that water resources and the accompanying ecosystem. So I urge Tanzanians to seize that opportunity of using water bodies to generate or to make significant contribution to the economies and the economy of the nation. But also, as we harvest resources from these water bodies, we need to understand that the sustainable benefits from blue economy, they normally go hand in hand with conservation of the environment from which these resources are tapped, or that environment which hosts those resources which we harvest on one hand, but also the responsible harvesting of the fishery resources on the other hand. Because if you don't take care of the environment on which those resources are hosted, you are not going to get sustainable benefits of the blue economy. Therefore, protection of the environment, water bodies, and the accompanying ecosystem is of paramount importance.
And that is Dr. Rashid Tamatama, who is the Permanent Secretary, looking onto the fisheries in the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries, and we are looking onto the blue economy in Tanzania as we gear to brace in the next coming the 5-year strategic plan. With those few remarks, I would really like to say thank you, Doctor, once again for blessing our program, and all the very best. It's quite ambitious, but we look very much forward with optimism that we're going to see a much more larger contribution of the sector in the GDP. To my viewers, let's seize the opportunities from the water bodies available, and thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm your host, Austin Makani. This was the Monday Agenda.